What's going on, guys? Low Voltage Ghost here, back again with another video. I want to somewhat put together what access controls really is and focus on the main four components that an access controls system usually uses. Obviously, you have all different kinds of scenarios on access controls, but in this instant, we're just going to focus on a regular office layout with a receptionist entrance, a back entrance. I will be showing you guys and be sharing my screen of the layout that I put together with icons representing the four main components that an access control systems requires in this type of scenario, right? Offices and a single story building, pretty much. What you see here in the table is the following. We have a card reader, a lock, a request to exit, and a door contact sensor. So these four main components are what usually make the basics of your access controls. The reason I have my meter hooked up to the door contact sensor is just so you know that these sensors here emit a signal, and it's really just reporting back to the main brains of the system. Door contact sensor here is to monitor the door status. The card reader is for somebody to recognize, your badge and credentials, and you be able to make an entry on that actual door. What's securing it? Of course, an electric lock. This instant here is an electric strike. There is different type of locks, but that will be on another video, so stay tuned. And the request to exit. The same way you need to make an entry, the same way is for making an exit. So whenever you make an exit, a sensor needs to detect you, and you can make a clean exit without the system, the door contact sensors, stating that the door has been forced open, which means that the system will go off an alarm and say that an intruder broke the sensor, meaning that they went through the door unauthorized. I will show you real quick what I mean by the sensor here sending the signal. So I have it hooked up here on my two leads, going back to my meter, creating a full circuit. Obviously, these door contact sensors get a little bit more complex as you add more things to it. You can add resistors. In this instant, we're just going to show you the basics. This door contact sensor, just see it as a sensor monitoring the door being opened, closed, or somebody just putting their foot and not wanting to let the door shut, which will send the signal to the panel or the smart system stating that somebody is holding that door open. So dispatch security and go check it out. So that being said, we're going to simulate here real quick what the door contact sensor technically does, right? Just report to the panel. So here on my meter, we'll go ahead and put my meter on tone, right? And this really just going to tone out from this point to this point, a circuit that's going to be either open, and we'll go ahead and simulate here the door being closed. So the door is closed, the door is open, closed, open. So with that being said, pretty much that is just a sensor letting you know that the door has been opened. Let's go ahead and get to the layout that I put together for y'all and get started. Alright guys, here's the layout that I put together to be able to show you what an access control system looks like. This here is representing a first floor of a building. In this floor, you will see that on some of the rooms, doors, and entries to the building, I have highlighted red. This indicates that that particular door or entry to that room will be having access controls. Like I said, we'll be focusing on the main four components that access controls usually requires based on this scenario. Here, I am going to be representing through these four icons, this lock representing the electric lock, this little badge representing the badge reader, this red circle indicating a sensor for the door position. Remember that sensor that I talked about? The door being open and closed. And the REX, which stands for request to exit. Let's talk about these four things first. The electric lock, what it really is a lock that's going to be securing your door. Badge reader was going to be letting you through the door depending on the approval of your credential. DPS, or door contact, is the sensor that will be monitoring the door either being opened, closed, or held open. And the request to exit really is just going to be the sensor that is on the inside detecting the motion of you walking out through that door. So what do we mean by request to exit? So you know that within an electric lock, in order for you to go in through that door, and we'll go ahead and take a look at the door right here real quick. Let's use the rear entrance as an example. You have your lock. It could be electric strike, mag lock, etc. That lock, in order to open, needs a badge. So if you scan your badge and you go through the door, the system will see you opening the door, but the system will see that it's okay for you to open that door because you have a badge. Now, if you were not to badge and wanted to make an entry through this door, you can't do that because there's a lock. But if somebody were to want to pick the lock or force the door and make an entry without badging, the system will recognize that as a door forced and will trigger an alarm saying somebody did not use a badge to make an entry. With that being said, there's an intruder in the building. That's where the request to exit comes in place. The same way you need something to enter the door or the building, you need a sensor to detect you to make an exit. If you are approaching the request to exit, which is a motion detector device, while approaching that sensor, it will pick you up and it will sense you, sending a signal to the system stating that you are making an exit through this door. When you open the door, there will be no alarm because you activated the request to exit for this particular door. So in order to make a clean exit or a clean entry, you need to activate either the badge reader with the correct credentials and the request to exit. These are your four components, and we will get more into detail eventually on how to wire these up, but this is really just for you to be able to get to know how access control system actually works and to have a visual representation of how it looks like on a drawing. So here we have a few different scenarios, right? They want to control the main entry door. They want to control the back door. So those are pretty much your doors. There is another door here, which I didn't add, but let's just assume there's no door there. They just want to protect the two main entries to this building are the rear and the main entrance. And they are protecting those through a badge reader. So only authorized personnel could go ahead and go through that door. They also wanted to put a badge reader and a lock on the boss number 1 office and boss number 2 office. They don't want anybody to just walk in through these doors. They will need the required credentials to be able to make an entry. The red lines represent the cabling ran to the system. So this cable on a previous video that I put together is called a composite wire or component wire, which I will be showing you an image of it in a little bit. And this here is representing your head end or smart board that is receiving all the information. Your card reader, your lock, your request to exit, and your door sensor. This is what's monitoring everything. And all the cables get terminated and landed on this. You have seen some of my videos and seen me talking about what each component inside of it technically does, right? But this is really what controls everything that has to do with your doors through smart boards, power supplies, etc. In this instant, they also want to go ahead and put a card reader and a lock and all the four sensors to be able to keep the high security files and the alien files under lockdown. There is no card reader through the center of these two doors, which is fine because they are really just worried about who's going in, and whoever is in is going to be having access to high security files and alien files. So who has access to what gets decided through the software that is being installed in the system. And they also want a badge reader here, a lock, a sensor, and a request to exit. They technically want access controls on the network room also to be able to protect all the network wiring and access control systems, maybe even fire systems, but they usually put a lock here also. So yeah, technically a wire would have to be ran what we call a home run from point A, being at the head end of the equipment, and B, being at that location where that door is going to be taking the access control security system. Let's move forward and look at the access controls cable. I have a video also showing exactly what each cable is and what it actually is used for, as well as putting a couple labels here on each of the wire components inside of it. So this yellow ring that you see here, it's pretty much just the jacket, the plastic that is protecting all these four groups of wires. And this wire here has 6 conductors. This one is used for the card readers. Usually card readers need 2 wires for power, 2 wires for communication, and 2 additional wires for additional features that the card reader could go ahead and do or have. It could be a different activation of color LED, or it could also be a different kind of tone that the card reader can emit. We have the electric lock power wire, which is this one. This is the group of wires that will give power to the lock. So we have red and black, red being positive and black being negative, and 2 extra wires as spares. The request to exit wire here needs 4 wires also, but this one here is for your request to exit device, 2 wires for power, and 2 wires for the sensor. Positive and negative, since it takes DC voltage also, usually 12 volts, and green and white for the sensor. So whenever the motion is detected, it sends the signal to these 2 wires. And then you have your door sensor wire, door contact, which just takes 2 wires. Like I showed you previously on the video, through my meter. It's just technically just showing the system that the door has been opened and closed. On the next slide, I'll be showing you technically what the devices look like on the door. I have another video showing specifically how these devices are installed and look like on the door, but this is just a visual representation of what it looks like. We have the controller, which on the previous image I showed you that the controller was here, and then we have the red, which is the cable going to the door. In this instant, I'm showing the door here, and the wires here, it's 4 wires, but technically those 4 wires is just the yellow wire going to the door. The 4 wires inside of this yellow one are these 4 colors. We technically usually run the cable from point A, the head end, to B, the door, but we have a junction box usually sometimes installed above the door where we could go ahead and have our additional service loop wire. One of those wires is for the card reader, like I said. One of those is going to be for the lock power. Sometimes the lock, it could be a lever set or an electric strike. The request to exit sensor, which is usually on the inside, the secured part of the door. Card reader outside of the door. And door sensor usually is on the frame of the door, where it senses the door being open and closed. That is pretty much the basics of this video. I hope it didn't take too long for me to explain this to you, but I just wanted for you to get a basic how this looks like on an actual drawing. Please, if you have any questions, make sure you leave them down below, and we will see you on the next one.